what mistakes did you make at your first company that you vowed never to make at The Muse? That is also a very good question. I made so many mistakes at my first company. In fact, sometimes I look back on all the money that I lost when that company, when I left and when it failed, and I think that was just like what I had to pay to get the experience that enabled me to start The Muse and to make it very successful. So there was a few big buckets of mistakes. The first was choosing your business partners wisely, which was not something that I realized the importance of. People had told it to me. I mean, I knew at a very intellectual level that you were supposed to choose your business partners wisely. And I was working with many of the same people that I'm working with now who, I love and I trust completely, but I was also working with people who were very smart, very talented, and had very different ethics than me. And, there was a situation somewhat early on where I was sitting in a meeting and I saw somebody that I was working with lie outright to someone else at the meeting. And I remember thinking, I don't know if I'm comfortable with that, but I didn't fully make the connection that in general, I think if you have a really very different set of values and ethics, if you can't completely trust the people that you're going into business with, that is only going to get worse down the line. And for me, I think I looked at the early struggles of my first company and I kept thinking, if we can just get through this period, we'll figure it out. Whereas the sort of difficulty, that was one of the big reasons that I think the company ultimately failed. It was the biggest reason was that we didn't pick partners wisely, and specifically it was around the way that we all believed in treating other people and kind of values and ethics and fairness and a lot of things like that. And then related to that, the second is actually making sure that you get agreements in writing with co-founders, with business partners, etc. So many entrepreneurs come to me and they say, I've been working on this project, we're really good friends, so we haven't really formalized, it's all going to be okay. And for every time it is actually okay, there are probably 2 or 3 times where it's not. And I really deeply believe if there's one thing you take away from this entire chat, that it's incredibly important and helpful to make sure you formalize things. And not just on a piece of notebook paper, because I did that for the first company, and it's actually really difficult to take a piece of notebook paper, even if it's relatively clear, and go get that enforced. It's often easier for both parties to walk away. So if you want to have an agreement, and again, I think it's really important, I think it's worth the investment, sitting down with a lawyer and saying, all right, what happens in this case? What happens in this case? And there's some great resources online. So I highly recommend Goodwin Procter the law firm has something called Founders Workbench, and the law firm Orrick has something called Total Access. People often ask me to spell these, so I'll go ahead and I guess spell them out, but Orrick is O-R-R-I-C-K, it's Total Access, and then Goodwin Procter is the other law firm, and they have Founders Workbench, and these are legal tools online backed by top law firms that will help you and any business partners think about the issues, split up equity and ownership, etc. So definitely go do that. Other mistakes that I'll quickly touch on that I made in the first company. One was you didn't pay enough attention to design. The very first site that that we ever launched to the internet was unbelievably ugly. I mean, you guys are probably all thinking of ugly sites, and I guarantee we were 50 times uglier than that. And I look back, and it's easy to laugh about, but the fact was, people came to the site and they liked what we were doing, they liked the idea, they liked what we had to offer, but they were less comfortable sharing it with their friends because of how bad it looked. And I think that's what is easy to overlook is, if you have really great idea and really great content, but you're not communicating it well, people may still see that content, but a lot of times they're less enthusiastic about talking it up to other people or giving you that word of mouth that you need, because if it looks amateur, they're a little bit less inclined to put their name behind it. And I think one of the biggest examples I can give is when we first started the Daily Muse, we didn't have the best design in the world, but it did look clean, it looked simple, it looks good, and people were so much more comfortable. We actually had a lot of people who had been familiar with the first company come back and say, oh my goodness, I love what you're doing now, and I have to just say, I thought the first site was really ugly. I'm yeah, I know. So that's another one. I may think of more mistakes we made at the first, but I'll go on to the next question for now.